Some time back, I created a fighter for my friend's game, and I explicitly made the character hesitant towards violence. He was one of those, I won't start a fight, but I will end it types. At least when it came to protecting his friends. I kinda based his personality on one of my dogs. For the first few sessions, that was fine, but eventually the Dungeon Master approached me and said that there were complaints about my character not acting like a fighter. My immediate concern was that I had not been doing the right things during combat, but none of the complaints were about how I'd actually performed during combat. There were no complaints about my build at all. Instead, I was told that my character was too much like a Boy Scout to be a fighter. The Dungeon Master, a history major, told me that the chivalric way that I was playing my character was historically inaccurate, and I should either be more aggressive or play another class. Ma'am, it's okay. You're going to be okay. I'll make sure that... No, stop. You're doing this all wrong, man. Okay, I've got some notes you gotta
What are you
look over.
talking about? Dude, this is a D&D game, not a...
It doesn't matter. Stop, alright? Your character is just acting way out of line.
What are you talking about? I know it's a bad phrase, but it is what my character would do. I'm like, a good person.
Yeah, well, being a good person is not historically accurate.
Being a good person is historically inaccurate.
Yep, exactly, okay? Chivalrous knights are not a thing, okay? You have to be a dick to basically everyone you meet. And this innocent person who's not bothering you at all needs your help, well, you have to murder her brutally. Because that's what your character would do. And action.
Hi, woman in need of my aid. You're weak, and I will kill you.
This shocked me, as he was normally open to characters that broke stereotypes, and he was a martial artist in real life who was a bit of a Boy Scout himself. This wasn't an evil or even edgy campaign, so my character's personality overall wasn't the problem. I was just told to pick another class instead. Paladins were limited to being god-based only, and that didn't fit with my character's personality either. I just wanted to play a decent, supportive guy who knew how to fight and was careful about escalating conflict. Ultimately, despite being a great group with amazing roleplay interactions, I chose to leave. Even if I could create a new character, I just don't know if I trust the DM to work past these kind of stereotypes anymore. I recently asked the DM if he thought casters should immediately try to solve all problems with spells, and if rogues should try to solve all problems with deception. He basically said yes. Am I missing something here? No, this DM is just choosing to die on the weirdest hill, and yeah, it's not a group worth staying in. Being a nice person is not historically inaccurate, especially in a frickin' fantasy game. This all started a few months back when I joined a campaign online. It was one of those big D&D discords where you find games, and I decided on this, colonization and a horror story. I wonder what the horror will be about. Ain't passing the sniff test, man!
Yeah.
So did the other players. Speaking of which, me as the Dragonborn Rogue, Paladin as a problem player human, Cleric, another problem player who was an elf this time, Druid, who was a Mind Flayer homebrew race, and the Dungeon Master who did not seem to know what we all wanted. Cleric started making some passive-aggressive comments. Paladin and Cleric were both following the majority religion of the old world, trying to spread to this new world. Druid, on the other hand, was a blind, prophetic folk preacher from the new world who wandered around doing miracles and healing people, sort of a local wise man type. He asked if that would conflict with Paladin and Cleric's goals, but Dungeon Master said it wouldn't before they got the chance to answer. He asked them again, and they said it didn't conflict with their goals. Yeah, because that's never been historically a problem. Nah. After this, session 1 to 5 went well. Paladin and Cleric kept trying to convert people, and they found moderate success. However, a lot of the locals kept sticking with Druid ceremonies and prophecies. Now, one big reason is that Paladin and Cleric borderline refused to use their powers as examples. They said they wouldn't call upon their god to do petty tricks, and only use it in combat, and for like 2 pranks Cleric decided to pull. My god's a holy being of light and life. I would never extort their power for anything but the most essential of needs. Anyway, hey, G, can you, TP that guy's house, please?
Sure, man, I've got you.
Sweet, yeah. Druid, on the other hand, did massive rituals and ceremonies with the villages and gave out blessings left and right. Paladin and Cleric also had some weird views on what the campaign was about. I was in it to sell my own town and maybe form a country if I could. Druid just wanted to have some fun and made a character he felt fit the setting. Paladin and Cleric seemed to have a different goal. They started talking about how frustrated they were that the savages weren't becoming civilized with them. Apparently, they thought the entire campaign was some sort of civilizing mission, but none of this actually mattered until Session 8. In Session 8, we were finally arriving at the land I was supposed to settle down in, and Druid mentioned he might settle down with me. And I was like, oh, why? And Druid said, it's near my old home, not to mention the... Oh, come on! You guys cannot be mad at me for not knowing what to do with that. This is not my fault. Come on! Rockmalaferon? We'll go with that. Now, the Rockmalaferon is a really big holy site to Druid's folk religion. It is literally a really big rock pillar in the middle of the woods. Cleric and Paladin are starting to get agitated. They keep insisting the Dungeon Master was playing favorites, despite the fact that they have successfully, apparently, converted around 80% of the NPCs we have met. They insisted the Druid was intentionally encouraging people to not convert with his devil magic, even though he had been chill with conversions this whole time. So Cleric decides she's going to get some well-earned holy vengeance. So while me and Druid start building our houses, Paladin and Cleric just start glaring at us. Cleric sneaks off to the Rock Malaferin when Paladin follows her. I notice and follow them, so Druid follows me too. We arrive at this holy site, and Cleric decides she is going to desecrate it. Druid warns her that if she does this, he's going to kill her. I say that I agree with my shaman, as I had converted in Session 7 after Cleric refused to help dehydrated children who weren't part of her religion, and Druid summoned a rainstorm to end the 30-year drought. Paladin says he will protect the Cleric. DM is super hyped and is eager to see how we're going to resolve this. Bro, nope.
You are a disgrace, and I am going to kill you! You can't kill me. If I kill you first! Well, you can't kill each other. If I kill both of you, my shot will pierce your heart. Soul is will not be able to stand against weak. This entire
This is such a great role-playing, guys. I'm really loving this conflict that you guys have got going on with your characters.
We're all going to die!
Anyway, Cleric pisses on the big rock, and Druid immediately starts slinging spells, while I start stabbing. Paladin charges at us screaming with his sword raised, and combat ensues. Me and Druid eventually win, but DM is mad. DM starts yelling at us about how he ruined his big reveal and derailed the campaign, and Paladin and Cleric were actually surprised that we killed them. So it turns out DM had this whole plot line of me and Druid realizing that our religion is fake, and we need to convert to Paladin and Cleric's religion. I'm sure the implications of that are unintended. Right?
Oh my god!
DM.
Racist! That came out of nowhere! Did it?
Paladin and Cleric were told this before Session 0. They were friends with DM IRL, apparently, and were acting the way he told them to act. It turns out they wanted to play their characters nicer, but DM said it would derail the game. At this point, when everything is laid out, Druid and I start arguing back that we were never told this, and he should have made this more apparent. Then Paladin says, wait, you didn't tell them? Now Paladin and Cleric are also arguing with the DM because he was supposed to tell everyone this at Session 0. After about an hour of everyone arguing, Druid just leaves. This ripple effects and everyone else is leaving too. I have not heard from Paladin or Dungeon Master since, but I did play a different game with Druid and Cleric, and it was a lot more of a fun time. TLDR, DM makes a campaign centered around converting locals to a different religion, doesn't tell half of the players, proceeds to blame all the players when it descends into PvP. Now, we are going to ignore the interesting aspects of the DM's intended story and just move on to the communication thing because, yeah, dude, this story might make some people uncomfortable, to say the least. When there is something in a player's backstory that is not the way it appears, I know that you don't want to spoil the big reveal for everyone, and it is a hard line to balance. For example, in Critical Role Campaign 2, Matt Mercer had a character named Yasha who had memory issues. He filled that in with plot-relevant details, but I'm sure he communicated some aspect of that to her. Similarly, in a recent campaign of my own, I have a cleric whose religion is kind of sus, but I've made that extremely clear that these people may not have her best interest in mind, but I didn't tell her the specifics. There's still gonna be a twist. I'm sure she's still gonna be surprised, but I made sure it's not the bad kind of surprise, like this. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the druid's religion was perfectly valid, and yet the DM is making it out to be evil without any sort of communication. How were they supposed to know? I honestly think this whole thing was a mess from the beginning. Plot lines like this are just hard to do right, and the way the DM is trying to do it is, it's cringe. There's no other word for it. This is cringe. It's bad. I'm really tired of all the boring D&D setting books I've been seeing. I don't want the 60th fantasy city or wilderness. I'm looking for something to really wow my players, but I just am not seeing it. Thank God for Wandering Tavern. This video is sponsored by the Wandering Tavern Kickstarter, an absolutely incredible 180 plus page traveler's guide to an expansive, floating tabletop role-playing game setting inspired by Studio Ghibli. I talk often about how anime is not really my thing, but if I'm being honest, guys, Ghibli has been an exception throughout my entire childhood. The moment I saw this Kickstarter art, I was already hooked. It is absolutely incredible. An amazing tavern filled with dark mysteries entangled with truths for you and your players to unlock. Urban settings can sometimes get kind of samey, but this is completely unique, with over 15 battle maps, unique NPC patrons and staff, plenty of remarkable magic items, and an incredible quest for your players to undergo. Oh hey, by the way, I know some of you guys love extra systems, and guess what? They've got one. An amazing vehicle building system for you to create your own dream Zephyrs, aka airships, for your Dungeons and Dragons game. These guys have already far exceeded their initial goal, so if you guys love the wondrous feel and have a love for D&D 5th edition, I don't see why you wouldn't pledge. If you guys are interested, you can head down into the description down below or head to the pinned comment where you can click that affiliate link to go to the Wandering Tavern Kickstarter to get your hands on this incredible setting book for your next Dungeons and Dragons game. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. Thank you so much to Wandering Tavern sponsoring this video. Seriously, guys, cannot recommend this one enough. Without further ado, though, I'm going to turn back into an animated rat so we can get back to the video. Hey there, Crispy, big fan of the show, and I've been pretty much binge watching and hearing for a while now. Thank you, by the way. I never shared this story anywhere, so I thought this would be a good place. During a now completed campaign I was the dungeon master for, the group in story were supposed to save all the 5 nations from an evil darkness caused by the big bad evil guy who was trying to take complete control of the world. Now, of course, during this adventure, there was plenty of downtime for connections and character development. There were also 2 players who were the main focus of this story. This game also takes place all on Discord. Player A, who we'll call Phoenix, she, her, and Player B, who we will call Star, he, him. Before I forget, both player characters are women in the campaign. During Phoenix's time with us, she wanted to expand her story and romance another player character. Only issue is, the player character she wanted to romance, that character, well, she had already been taken by a DM NPC of mine. Note, this in-game relationship was a build-up on a massive piece of character development and a lot of moments from their downtime. Anyways, of course, before the characters got into a relationship, Phoenix and Star's characters were good friends. Phoenix would flirt with Star's character, but he didn't really seem to reciprocate the flirting back as his character. But for some reason, Phoenix was still determined to make Star's character her partner no matter what. A few big adventures and a big mini-boss kill later, they're having some downtime in a manner that Phoenix's character owns. There was a moment before the big make-or-break moment, where Star's character wanted some melted cheese on their bread, so he sent his character to Phoenix's room to make her character melt the cheese. But the way Phoenix described it made it rather intimate. Oh yes, melt that cheese, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Okay, you know what? Now that I've seen horny TikTok videos, I feel like anything can be sexualized at this point. Now, this is the part that was going to make or break this campaign for Phoenix. Star's character went to take a bath after a long day of adventures, and Phoenix said her character would join Star's. So after a little bit of talking, Phoenix begins to advance on Star's character. Star was trying his best to get away, but Phoenix would persist. Phoenix would hug Star and hold Star's character close, and as things seem to be getting a little too saucy, Star pulls his character away and leaves the shower scene. Girl is not getting the hint. After that, we ended the session after the group went to investigate an explosion outside. A few sessions later, Phoenix comes up to me to talk about completing their character story. So we did just that, and she proceeds to leave the campaign once it was done. I didn't think much of it. She said she wasn't feeling it anymore, and that's cool. Don't do anything you don't feel up to, you know? But after our campaign ended a year later, Star and a couple of the group members got word from Phoenix that she actually left because Star's character didn't romance with her character. Even after the advancement in the showers. She didn't even care if Star's character was taken. She thought it was plenty enough to convince her to leave the NPC Star's character had grown to love. I loved them so much.
I understand, you know, rejection can be really hard sometimes, alright? I get it.
It doesn't make any sense. I checked all the boxes.
Like what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, we did the hot cheese melting scene. We did the sexy showers.
I don't think...
We did the scene where I wait for her in a tree. Like, I saw that in Dickinson. It should have worked, man. Like, it doesn't
Look,
make
hey,
any sense.
Crispy number 12, I know that we don't really get this kind of stuff, but when you're trying to woo somebody, you can't just, like, fulfill a list of requirements. There's like a feeling, like something deeper, a connection between two people. It's a really important part of forming a romantic bond, and sometimes, for reasons that honestly none of us can explain, that bond isn't there, and that's okay. What if I tried the fake dating trope? Do you think that would change things, or...
Okay, we need to do a purge.
TLDR, player quits campaign because the other player character didn't want to dump their current partner for their player character. This one is not nearly as creepy as some romance stories that we have covered in the past, but it's still real pick-me behavior to be trying to do this in a D&D game when someone else is clearly not interested at all. And to rage quit the game over it, well, it's not ideal. At the very least, though, this person didn't make the DM feel bad about it. Like, I gotta respect that, at least for a time, Phoenix just kept this crap to herself. I think that's honestly one of the best ways something like this could end. Phoenix had a problem, a silly problem, and a problem I don't think people should have, but a problem nonetheless, and she just decided to walk away from it. And you know what? That's what we encourage here at Crispy's Tavern. But any point she gets from that is neutralized by the fact that this problem is caused by her own creepy behavior. Just don't be a weirdo and you don't have to walk away, you know? This is my first time writing one of these, so please forgive me for any errors I make during this. This is also a lot less of an RPG horror story and more of an RPG fail story. This happened recently, but I can't recall all the details or double check them, so this is just my best attempt. Our story consists of 5 individual cast members. Myself, who's pretty new to tabletop role-playing games, but I do know the ropes, the do's and don'ts. Paladin seemed pretty experienced. Bard seemed new to the tabletop role-playing game scene. Sorcerer, I think. No idea what they were about, but I would assume they had some experience. And Dungeon Master, a very seasoned DM who cared a lot about the game that they ran. So it had been years since I last tried my hand at tabletop role-playing games. After multiple failed attempts to try and interest my friend group in trying them out, I decided to take to r/LFG to find a group. This was probably my first mistake, but I am quite the nervous person, and being able to be nobody online is quite appealing. So I started applying for any game that would fit my schedule, that is, in a system I understand well enough to not be asking questions and annoying people. Eventually, I got into a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Curse of Strahd campaign on LFG, what could go wrong? And I was quite happy. Something important to note here is that this listing had no screening. Every other game I applied to had forms or questions. This had none, which I guess was my second mistake. I talked to the Dungeon Master a bit, get invited to a Discord server, and meet the rest of the crew. I am the latest addition to the team, so I decided to look around the server. Things look pretty good. The Dungeon Master is very enthusiastic. Players are talking to one another about their characters. This is great, I think. I start talking with the Dungeon Master about character ideas, and after a bit, I have my character made. We talk about other things, as well as school, other hobbies, etc. Great, I think. It is always a great sign if you can talk to people about things other than the game. The group plans a Session 0 for the next week, and we shall jump in there. Session 0 comes around. We're all on time in the voice chat. We get to discussing. I'm taking notes, writing down everything we go over, and we go over the usual Session 0 stuff. We finish, and Dungeon Master proposes we jump right into Session 1 if we have the time, which we all say that we do. Why is this going so well? Where's the horror? Where's the failure? Oh god, I think I'm becoming a bad person. Session 1 begins with the bard walking down a pathway laced with heavy fog and scary trees on either side as they approach the gates of Barovia. They stop before the gate. The Dungeon Master then has my character do the same thing and meet up with the bard. This was the Dungeon Master's second mistake, the first one being the lack of screening. Unknown to anyone at the time, the bard was fairly new to this whole thing. And unknown to anyone, I was fairly new too. I guess everyone just assumed we had a lot of experience. So here's the bard, dead quiet, and me trying to come up with something as I wait for the Dungeon Master to decide to introduce another role player. I tried to roleplay with the bard a bit, but my skills are a little far below adequate. Again, to remind you, I haven't touched tabletop role-playing games in years, and bard is new to all of this. We have a bit of a back and forth, but it's awkward.
So, like, how'd you get here? I walked. Do you, not really. Okay.
Meanwhile,
Hey, DM, are you sure we shouldn't, like, help them out? The secondhand embarrassment's gonna TPK the party. No, this is good, Just watch. How could I have seen that coming?
Upon hearing this, the sorcerer leaves the call server and just blocks the DM. All of us are confused. The Dungeon Master shares with us that Sorcerer was the first to apply and was really enthusiastic about the whole thing. How they really wanted to play Curse of Strahd. How they really got into making their character, the whole thing. I didn't say at the time, but I realized what had happened. Sorcerer came into this thinking we were all seasoned veterans, realized that we weren't that, and decided this wasn't the game for them and just left. Now, I respect the reason, but seriously, leaving like that without saying anything? This is why Dungeon Masters have to screen people before, and this is why DMs, if you don't, then ensure we talk about past TTRPG experience during Session 0 itself. Thank you! I am myself taking note of these two things, and I don't want history repeating itself. After like 15 minutes of reassuring the DM, this isn't their fault. Sure. No, but seriously, this is the right thing in the moment. If this kind of thing happens early in the campaign, you don't need to give the DM a whole freaking lecture. It's not the time, right? Time and place. In the middle of the session, not the time, not the place, at least in my opinion. So anyway, we were sure that Sorcerer had nothing against them, and that sometimes things like this just happen. The DM decided to continue the session. The Paladin gets introduced, and we're on our way. A bit of awkward roleplay stuff happens as three of us walk, but eventually we arrive at a house where two children tell us there's a monster in their house. And so, like any good doing band of adventurers, we go to kill the thing. Halfway through, the bard goes AFK and says nothing. We wait for 20 minutes before finally we learn that the bard isn't in their own house, and is being told to leave wherever they are currently. Where were they?
Is everything okay?
Everything's fine, okay? I have a right to be here. You can't take me alive!
Sir, this is the CIA headquarters.
You can't take...
I'm going back to in-person games.
We end the session there, and Dungeon Master says they will try and find a new fourth member. Everyone but me and the Dungeon Master leaves the call. Originally, I was going to ask the Dungeon Master to look over the notes I took for Session 1 to ensure their accuracy, but that never happened. Instead, the DM showed me all their work for previous campaigns, most of which have been their own horror stories, like really bad horror stories. No fault of the DM by the sounds of it, though. They shared with me things they found, like cool drawings they made, etc. I told them after, I think, an hour and a half that I had to go. I really did have to go. I was already behind schedule. And they apologized a lot for subjecting me to that conversation. I assured them I stayed there on my own accord and enjoyed it. No lie from me. I thought all that was cool and quite impressive. A few days ago, the DM announced that Paladin also dropped the campaign due to real-life issues, and the Dungeon Master was tired of running campaigns just to have them fall apart. Shortly after, the server was deleted. I was sad at hearing this news, but told the Dungeon Master understood and respected their choice. After hearing the horrors of what happened to them before, I don't blame that this was the last straw. Fuck. So I'm back at square one, but I think I will wait a bit to try and join another group. If you have any writing tips for me, please let me know. Sorry if this was long. I could have done a probably better job. Though, I hope I don't have any more horror stories to share. I doubt this will be my last, though. I would never be allowed the luxury of being that lucky. This DM definitely made some mistakes. They're not the worst mistakes you've ever seen, but the big problem is that they were early mistakes. First impressions mean a lot. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I mean, I think sometimes first impressions mean a little bit too much, but unfortunately, they do mean a lot in our minds. And this first impression is just not really that solid, especially in an online game that's so easy to leave. They're gonna be hit or miss, and a lot of them may be misses. It's your ability to get back up and try again that's gonna really define you as an online dungeon master looking through LFG. Do your best to make that first session, even the first few seconds of the first session, a hit. Hooking your players in and getting them invested, that is the hurdle. After that, well, that's when you get your game. Anyways, on to my story. This takes place when I was in high school. We were all probably around 16/17 at the time. I had a group of people I went to high school with who all played D&D together on the weekends. This group had a ton of red flags I didn't catch on to, such as the fact that we had 8 players and a dungeon master and a co-dungeon master all at one table. I at one point ran a campaign for everyone. Technically I was the co-DM, but did all the writing, planning, etc. I have so many horror stories I could share from that campaign, but decided I will share my most told story of how I got my rule number 1 of Dungeons & Dragons. For background that's important to the story, the other DM had also been stressing this entire campaign to the players and to me that a good dungeon master doesn't say no, but instead that there will be consequences. That's garbage advice! Seriously, like some of the worst advice. In-game, the world had a major city. I think the name was just The City, which had a strict caste system. One of the major interesting parts was that duels were legally important and honored. The players had just made it to a major town outside the city that was governed by strength. I had noticed some of the players didn't really care about their characters or the story, and I, for some reason, thought that if I did better at DMing, they would suddenly care. So I came up with the genius idea of giving the party a party daughter figure to watch over and help guide into being an adventurer. I put her in to help the party understand the new area and help them find the important people they needed to talk to. This is not a bad idea, though I will say it does usually need to come more naturally. Having a person for the players to hook onto, it is always more efficient than having them care about the nebulous good of the people. A specific person will always be easier to connect to. I especially love the cute naive daughter trope for this. Of course, this isn't a horror story, so I'm kind of worried about isekai slave crap right now. Yeah, I just learned about that trope. See, I get anime. They met her in a tavern as she is pickpocketing patrons. This is where the problems immediately became present. One player, who will be known as Wizard for the rest of the story, started doing things that made everyone super uncomfortable. It started with him trying to pressure the girl, I believe I established her as 14 to 15, into drinking, which I shut down as part of her backstory. Then, on walks in the town, he made a point to say he stood uncomfortably close to her, which other players shut down. This all led to the moment they left the town, heading straight towards their big fight. As soon as they were traveling, he said, "I challenge you to a duel for your virginity, and if you win, I'll leave you alone." What a reward. This is probably the most upset and uncomfortable I've ever been at a D&D table ever. My brain, thoroughly convinced that I shouldn't just say no, went along with it. She moonbeamed him to the great hereafter, and the party decided to not help. I am surprised I held it together at this point, as I continued as if nothing happened, and ran their big fight anyway.
Yes, At last, your virginity shall be mine to
So does anyone want to kill a dragon?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool.
After that session ended, no one was happy with what the wizard did. We all brought up that after that stunt, no one wanted him at our table, but the DM said he doesn't really have any other friends. I wonder why. And I'd feel bad kicking him out. Since it was the DM's house we played at, that meant he stayed for the rest of the campaign, around a year. When I found a group I enjoyed DMing for, I brought up this story in session 0, and now it's become one of those, this can go wrong if you don't prioritize comfort, which now I usually sum up as, rule 1 on my table is, no one tries to bone any children. This is a legitimate thing I question sometimes, how to get the safety tool discussion going. I usually say the things I'm personally uncomfortable with, like descriptions of wet clothing is one of my weirder quirks, for example. It makes other people more comfortable discussing their own weird quirks, but dovetailing into the crazy stuff I read about in horror stories, I don't see how that doesn't sound weird. What I do is I have a little channel in my Discord, a safety tools channel where I explicitly say, these topics come up, these topics don't. How do you guys do it? Because it can be hard discussing these kind of things sometimes. As for the actual story, I don't think I need to explain why this is bad. High school or not, this is not behavior you should be exemplifying at the table, and not behavior you should tolerate. This is exactly why DMs need to be allowed to say no. It is unhealthy to expect that everyone's going to have positive energy. Sometimes, you're gonna need to shoot someone down. Hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern adjacent D&D podcast. I got a new guest coming in very soon. So if you guys are excited for that, please do head into the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Not picking you to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.
Sir, this is the CIA headquarters. I need you to leave right now. You monsters! You can't take me! No! No!